Hey guys, it is Leonine Shift. Um, it's first day that I've been able to ride where it's been in the 70s, and instead of worrying about staying warm, I have the problem of staying cool in the leather jacket. But it's a problem I embrace. It's about 72, so really ideal riding weather as far as I'm concerned. But last week I did a review of my FZ-07, relatively new bike to me, and the video is what it is. But I've sort of watched some other videos about the FZ-07 since then, and one of the questions that seems to come up pretty frequently is how good of a starter bike is the FZ-07. So without further ado, let me dive right into that topic, because I definitely have an opinion on it. I rode a different bike when I got into riding before I bought my FZ, and I am very, very glad I did that. For one thing, I rode a GS500, and I've got videos of me on the GS500, and it's a great bike. It's an old design. I guess Suzuki made the GS500 for 20 years. Old carbureted twin. Not much that you can't work on that bike. It's pretty basic machine, but very reliable, if a bit underpowered. And I think that bike topped out on horsepower around 42 or 43. The previous owner to me had a stage 1 dyno kit done on it, and he had a Two Brothers exhaust on it. Well, he capped his slip-on exhaust because when he upgraded, for obvious reasons, he wanted to put on his new bike. So I put a Yoshi on it, as much for the sound as anything, although I definitely did notice it seemed to pep it up a little bit. So, let's just say it was a 42 horsepower machine. I don't know what the torque numbers are, but that's the thing is it wasn't so much the horsepower as the torque, which I thought was good on the Suzuki, and I'd ridden a Ninja and a Honda Rebel, a 250 Ninja and a Honda Rebel and some other bikes, whatever the CBR version is, before deciding on the GS. And it was, I think, it had the best pull of any of the bikes I test drove before buying it. But anyway, I rode that for from early October until January. Until February the 10th, because that's when I got, and I still ride it today, by the way. It's a cool bike. I'm trying to decide whether or not I'm going to sell it, but if I do, it won't be because I don't like the bike. It'll just be because I don't know that I have enough time right now to ride two bikes and do all the other things I've got going on in my life. So anyway, that's another story. And I really have shown my ADD nature here by going into a tangent upon a tangent. My point is I was glad that this FZ was not my first bike, because I got to sort of learn how to ride on a bike that was in no way intimidating, had enough power to keep me interested for a while, to be sure. I never intended the GS to be a permanent bike for me. The idea was always for that to be a starter bike. I honestly, in my mind, figured I would ride it for a year, but it didn't work out that way. And one of the things that happened was I went to the International Motorcycle Show and saw an FZ. I was actually looking at the Suzuki line before I got to the show, and it just blew me away how great the lines on the FZ-07 and the FZ-09 looked, how comfortable they felt with the stock seat. And then I got to doing some research, and just really, really impressed by the specs on them: low weight, high torque, etc. So, well, the rest is history. In February of 2015, I bought an FZ-07. And so, do I regret starting on a GS? Not at all, because a couple things. One, I started on the GS because I knew I had a lot to learn, and also knew that even though I'm a guy in my 40s and pretty mature early rider, I had some experience before, over 20 years ago, but some experience. But there was a chance that I was going to put that bike down, and I'd much rather lay down a used bike that's worth, I ended up paying, I think, $1,500 for that bike. So I laid it down. I made sure it could run. It didn't do anything but cosmetic damage. I replaced the stator cover and the little logo on that, and I think a mirror, and moved on. So if I'd laid this bike down, and I've got frame sliders on it, as you can see right there. Well, maybe you can't see, but and axle sliders on it. But even still, there's a good chance you're going to tear some stuff up, and it's going to be much more expensive to repair it. So, not that it's a guarantee that I won't drop this bike, but I'm glad that I made my mistake on the less expensive bike, that it's not going to dramatically affect its value if there happens to be a drop. Almost probably more important than that, though, is the fact of the matter is, my opinion is this bike in the hands of a new rider who doesn't have good throttle control and good clutch control and good decision making, almost more than it. This bike is a very seductive bike. It's, I think Chase on Two Wheels said it, and it really is something about this sort of moto style makes you want to sort of go into hooligan mode and tear up the road. So you got to have some restraint. You got to have good throttle control. You got to have good clutch control, or the 75 horses and the 50 foot-pounds of torque can get you into a lot of trouble in a big hurry. So I don't think for most riders, I think it's going to be a pretty lousy starter bike. Are there riders where they could jump right on it and do well? Yeah, I watched a couple moto vlogs by people that this is their first bike. They jumped on it and they did great, and right on, good for them. I know a couple of them that had some scary moments early on the bike, but they made it through, didn't get hurt, everything's fine. So it can be a good starter bike. I just think the smart way to play it is to start on a cheaper, underpowered bike where you can get comfortable shifting and handling and not have high consequences of a mistake, either to your health or financially. So those are my thoughts on the FZ-07 as a first bike. Let me know what you think. Feel free to post comments, and I'll do my best to respond to them. That's it. So, have a great day. Enjoy the ride. And shift with pride. Later. Oh, and some supplemental thoughts to the FZ-07 review. A couple things I didn't talk about in that video, and they occurred to me afterwards watching it, which of course always as it is. Like when I make these videos, I just sit down or get riding and start talking. I don't really have points that I want to hit. It's just sort of, my thoughts as I'm riding, which I hope is more entertaining. I don't know how entertaining either one of them would be, but anyway. So one of the things I didn't talk about that I remembered is the engine braking of the FZ-07. It is pretty stout. If you downshift on this bike, and you do it at an RPM that's a little high, the engine braking will actually lock the rear wheel, not like a hard lock like skid, but it'll sort of grip and do the little squiggly thing in the rear, which actually is kind of cool. But the first time or two it happens, it's kind of freaky. I'd actually done it on my GS, so I knew exactly what I'd done, and it took a little getting used to because the engine braking, while pretty strong in the GS, is very strong in the FZ-07. So just something to watch out for. When you go to downshift, you know, I try to make sure that I've gotten my RPMs down to about 4,000 or less, and then it's not really a big problem. You know, maybe even lower than that. Actually, I don't really sit there and look at the tach, and that's another criticism I have of this bike. The tachometer is on this little screen here, okay, and you can see it, but man, I really miss my old analog round tach with a needle that you could sort of just look at out of the corner of your eye and by the position of the needle know about where your RPMs were. That and sound was enough for me to know exactly what my RPMs were in my GS. On this bike, like, I actually had to take my eyes off the road and look down, and then the numbers aren't hard to see or anything, but these tiny little numbers, and so you have to sort of look and see which two numbers you're between. Anyway, the tach's not as good. I wish I had an analog tach. I think the FZ-08 had an analog tach, and that was really nice. So anyway, not a huge criticism, but something that I think could be better. Although that seems to be the way of the industry, is to get away from the analog tach and towards a digital. Anywho, I think that's all my supplemental thoughts on the FZ-07 review. Oh, one other thing. I had a couple questions about my plug-in that I've got for my phone, and it's got a cigarette charger and 2 USB connections. So I put a link in the comment section. I will probably do a review this weekend on, not an install because I've already installed it, but I can like show where I landed the power and how I routed it and what I had to take apart and what I didn't have to take apart, because I'd seen a video where they said you had to remove the tank cover and the front sort of plastic piece here. I guess that's a fairing, whatever. Anyway, you don't. There's a way around it, and it works fine and looks. I've had a couple people ask me, "Oh man, that comes stock." It certainly did not, but it does look pretty good, and it's out of the way. And I like this PowerPoint because it comes with a switch that lights up when it's on, and at bike meets, I've actually had a couple people walk up and go, "Oh my God, what kind of alarm have you got on your FC?" And so I told them the truth, but it doesn't hurt if that creates the perception of an alarm when there is none. Jeez, man, do you have to go 30 miles an hour? I guess it is 35 here, so he's within 5. He's just not going as fast as I want him to. Well, I suppose we're all a bit egocentric when it all comes down to it. So, okay, that's really it this time. Goodbye.